Good morning, class. Let us pray first. Who will lead the prayer?
Assuming that the student led the prayer.
How's your day? Is it good so far?
Assuming that the student respond, it was great, ma'am.
That's good to know. Let us first discuss the learning objectives and the subject matter. So, our learning objectives are to critique written outputs when using the targeted grammatical structures, to use target grammatical structures meaningfully and appropriately in the written production, and to develop ways on how to assess grammar in the writing classroom.
Before we proceed, I would like to request everyone to please open your camera and I will take a screenshot for your attendance. Once again, I would like to request everyone to please open your camera and I will take a screenshot for your attendance. Okay, a screenshot in 3, 2, 1. Smile! Okay, thank you. You may now turn off your cameras if you're not comfortable. Now, are you ready to listen for our brand new topic today? Students will respond. Okay, that's good. Now, let's begin this with an activity. I will read 2 short stories that apply simple past and past perfect tenses, and then I will allow you to assess the short stories based on the question that I will ask later on. Assuming that the teacher already presented the 2 short stories. Now, here are the questions you have to answer. Just click the raise hand button and I will call your name. For the first question, what is your observation of the story? For the second question, do you think that the conversation happened in the past or in the present? And for the last question, did the short story reach your standard on how you assess written outputs? The students have raised their hands and answered the questions. Handouts will be provided. Students, make sure that you will study in advance these handouts that I have given you because at the end of every lesson, we will be having a quiz. This applies the 4th way of assessing grammar. Let us now proceed to the discussion proper by presenting the ways of assessing grammar in the writing classroom and by giving examples. The first part will be presented by Teacher Janelle.
So, our class for today is about grammar assessment in the classroom. We have 4 types of grammar assessment: the weekly mini lesson, the student grammar presentation, the conference tutorials, and the independent study guide. So, what is the weekly mini lesson type of assessment? Weekly mini lesson was focused on how the teacher gives the student their own room for improvement. In this assessment, the students will also be taught to assess their own works. The strength of this assessment is the lecture. The teacher can apply it by choosing a common error on the student's written output. He can leave a note or a comment on how to illustrate an error in the text. But take note, the teacher should avoid stating every single mistakes in the student's written output by simply presenting method or recognizing the errors for them. They can use it in revising pace. For example of the activity, we can give them a sample text to work on by pair. Remember, weekly mini lesson focuses on giving the students the chance to identify or fix the error and let the students develop their writing skills and do the work on their own. To expand the example for this assessment, we have an example here where the teacher can ask the students to work by pair and start by writing letter for each other. So, upon writing the letter, the teacher will also ask the students to use the past and perfect tenses in the written letter. In this case, the students were informed on the tenses that they should apply on their work and was also informed on how to assess their own works before finalization in the previous discussion. So, for the second type of assessment, we have the student's grammar presentation. So, compared to the last type of assessment, it gives chances of discussion by group. The teacher can give them a task to work out with the corresponding time to brainstorm. This makes the students more engaged in the learning process because their ideas were heard and welcomed in the group. But what we should remember in this type of assessment is that the grammatical jargons should be avoided because the activity doesn't stop in merely the discussion per group but also the presentation to it on the whole class. For example, the teacher asked the students to write a letter about their reflection on online classes this year. After finalization of it, the students will be given the time to present their written work and discuss the specific grammar topic in the paper that they would wanted to share.
For the conference tutorials, the focus of this assessment is that the way of addressing the grammar one-on-one in context, meaning the teacher is only focusing on one error at a time. And for the activity that you can do with this way of assessment is that after you check the written work of your students, you will choose one pattern of error, and after you discuss the things about their common error, give the written works back and then ask the students to identify his or her errors and correct them. For this way of assessment, always remember to avoid information overload. Just focus on one error at a time, and surely your students will understand and absorb the topic that you have just discussed. The suggested activity for this assessment is fill in the blanks test. This is used to test a specific grammatical structure or set of vocabulary. It is best to provide a word bank that supply more words than will be necessary to fill in the blanks to make the test more challenging. For the last way of assessing grammar in the writing classroom is the independent study guide. This assessment is more of individual activities. For the activity that you can do is to hand in handout or handouts at the beginning of the semester, and then schedule a test or a quiz over the materials. Also, always remember to review the rules and concepts in class during discussions. In addition, here are some suggested activities that you can use. For the first suggested activity is the cloze exam, which is used to test the understanding your students have of grammar. In a paragraph, replace every fifth or sixth word with a blank. Then, ask your students to fill in these blanks with words they think would be the most logical and grammatical. You will see a variety of answers among your students, but as long as the answers are logically and grammatically correct, the student should receive a full credit. And for the last suggested activity is having your students give you a writing sample. And this is another good way to assess their proficiency with grammar. If you have them write something for homework, there is a risk that someone other than your student will do the writing. Oftentimes, friends or native speakers will correct a non-native speaker's writing with the intention of helping. But this will not give you an accurate picture of your student's writing. So to avoid this, have your students do a periodic in-class writing. Give them an adequate amount of time to write about a subject that you assign. You will then get an accurate look at their grammatical and writing proficiency.
Okay class, for this simple activity that you will perform this morning, you have to choose your partner, and it may be your friend or your seatmate. Then you will write a letter for your partner using a simple past and past perfect tenses.
Assuming that the students proceed to find their partner and start to write a letter for their partner.
Now, after writing a letter for your partner, I want you to carefully review your work and edit some words that you think aren't fit for your letter to be grammatically and logically correct.
Let us assume that the students start to edit their own written letters.
Assuming that the students are already done with the simple activity, the teacher will ask to assess their partner's written work and a rubric will be handed. Now, after you finalize your work, let your partner assess your written work. You will be guided by a rubric so that you may assess the written work accurately. Okay, students, time is up. Now, let's start listening to the representatives of each group about their presentation of their written outputs. And class, please listen attentively as they identify and discuss the simple past and past perfect tenses of verb that they have used in their letters. Assuming that the students are already done reciting their written work in class, they are also asked to identify the simple past and the past perfect tenses that they have used in the letter. This activity is also a way of assessing the grammar proficiency of your students, and this way is called student grammar presentation. Good job, everyone! You have presented your written outputs very well. Now, let's have an enrichment activity and you can answer it through the link that I will be sending in our group chat. Answer the scenario-based questions according to what you have learned in our class today about the types of grammar assessment in writing. Students are now done answering the activity in the mentimeter.com.
Okay class, for the next activity we'll be having fill in the blank quiz. Are you guys ready? So I'll send you the link for the activity and I'll give you 5 minutes to completely answer it.
There will be an online assessment in Google Forms. Thank you so much, class, for actively participating in our class discussion today. I hope you have learned a lot about the importance of grammar assessment in writing, and may you use this knowledge to improve your writing skill. Before we end today's discussion, I will leave a Google document for your assignment, and I'll send the link in our group chat. For the integration of faith, values, and learning, we will hear it from Teacher Janelle.
Our IFVL was found in 2 Corinthians chapter 13 verse 5. It says that, examine yourselves to see whether you are in faith. Test yourselves, or do you not realize this about yourselves, that Jesus Christ is in you? Unless indeed you fail to meet the test. So grammar assessment is very important because it molds every learner's mind to be prepared enough to use the language properly. It gives us knowledge not just to assess others' work, but also to improve our own works. This was somehow related to our faith as a Christian. Having faith in Him is not just merely measured by our own works, but also about how deep our relationship is with Him. Examining ourselves helps us to keep our tracks straight directly to Him and avoid circumstances where we become lost in our Christian journey. So that is it for today. Class, please review your notes because we will be having a graded recitation next meeting. Good day, class. Have a nice day.